Two.
Oh, recording is in progress. Welcome, everybody. Skylar is very benevolent. She has provided me with a script because she knows I tend to go off track a lot. Like right now I'm going off track. So before she jumps in and tells me to shut the hell up and get on with the show, welcome to the Publishing Indie Ins and Outs. During this 10 o'clock hour, we have two authors speaking. Unfortunately, due to a family emergency, Blaze is not going to be joining us for this session. We hope that everything's okay. So we have the two authors speaking. Well, did we establish that? No, I think Des isn't here either. So
Des
maybe
is
we.
here. I'm trying to get Des in there. She's in the
Okay,
other room.
she'll be with us shortly then. So anyway, we have two speakers. And in the reading lounge, we have Meg Becker at 10:10. All these times are central, by the way, and not Eastern. The cool time, as I like to call it, Skylar says, be quiet. So I'm going to go and get off my Central Eastern soapbox. And then we have Ariel Dawn at 10:30 taking over. Crush wants to thank the Sex Symbol Podcast for sponsoring today's panel. If you're looking for a couple ladies who know how to shake things up, these are your gals. Oh, thank you. Somebody loves my voice. My mother always said I had a face for radio, so we'll fit right in with that. All right. So if I butcher anybody's names, I do apologize. It's going to go right to his head. Yes, it will, Ranch. Yes. I'm trying not to read comments in order to get because we do have a limited amount of time today. So, oh, it's 4 p.m. and dull and overcast in the UK. Well, it's a good thing that it's dull and overcast. That way you can spend all your time inside listening to us. So, today in this panel we have Cecile, and I'm sorry if I butcher anybody's names. I apologize. Cecile Tellier, is that correct?
Yep.
Oh, good, good. One for one so far. And then we are already covered Blaze. And then we have Des Sweet. Is she in the room currently?
I am here, but I can't see you guys.
Ah, I can see you. So welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. So we're gonna get going. I'll ask the questions. Skylar has also given me a series of questions to ask, which is great. My job is infinitely easier because she has done all of that. So the first question, we'll start with Cecile, is how do you think indie publishing changed in the past 10 years?
Oh gosh. So I love that question only because when I started, it was an interesting time. It was 2013. We had just come out of the Alora's Cave ebook, Amazon kind of war, for lack of a better term. At the time, they weren't selling ebooks. People were selling PDFs out of their email to people. Um, so it was really an interesting time when I first started. We weren't allowed to join like the Romance Writers of America as actual professionals at the time. We were allowed to be like almost an intern. um, so everything was very kind of early stages when it came to ebooks and when it came to indie publishing. Um, I found it to be harder back then to do it than I do now, obviously, because I think we've got a lot more tools now. And social media wasn't what it was then. Um, it's not what it is now, obviously. So I think my Twitter account started in 2014. So
So just a real quick question on that one. When you sold books through email, did you have to set up like a PayPal or what did they have back then to allow for payment?
so they didn't PayPal wasn't as usable
Sure.
back then. I had it, but most of us were getting checks mailed to us.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like it was some real old grassrootsy kind of stuff going on. And that's why a lot of people went to like Alora's Cave because she started doing that for everybody. She was like one of the first indie publishers. Um, and I had gotten published in 2014 with Siren initially, and then I eventually went to Evernight, and then I went completely indie. But Amazon changed the game in the beginning and kind of made it harder for the indie publishers. But as time went on, we were able to kind of evolve and kind of keep up to some extent.
Okay. And then Des, what about you? What do you think has changed in indie publishing in the last 10 years?
I'm going to answer the best that I can because I have not been publishing for 10 years. So I've only been really indie publishing for about 2 years. And I really think we are beginning to see a little bit of a shift almost where traditional publishing is starting to follow a lot of the trends of indie publishing. We're seeing some of those traditional published authors coming out with these insane special editions that are
Mm.
very similar to a lot of the special editions that you see indies running on Kickstarter, or even just with direct sales and stuff nowadays. So I think that's one of the biggest changes that we're seeing. And then also, I think we're seeing kind of a shift to different genres, right? So the industry has kind of been primarily dominated by regular just romance, right? And all of the different tropes within it. And we're seeing kind of this shift to darker romance. So even some of our traditionally published authors are publishing traditionally in that dark romance genre. So I think we're seeing a little bit of crossover in how traditional publishing is changing to kind of mimic the success that some of the indies have had.
Sure. And you see a lot of that as far as like traditional publications using social media. I mean, Book Talk has changed the game a little bit there as far as some of the indie publishers and whatnot. I know Brandon Sanderson uh, did his I can't Kickstarter for his series of books. He wrote like 5 books like last year or something like that. The guy's a workhorse as far as is concerned. But so next question is on the opposite side of things. Where do you two think indie publishing will be in the next 5 years? Cecile?
That it's curious. I mean, we have had so many shifts, I would say, even in the last 3 years. TikTok was a huge thing. Instagram, even with the Bookstagram people, Discords, the merge into audiobooks have gone through the roof. I think we are getting a different generation of readers now. I think some of the younger ones are hitting the prime kind of marketing point where they're getting into audiobooks because they don't like to read, or they're getting into, I mean, they're reading but they don't like to read in a traditional sense. They like to hear it, or the way that people consume their content is so varied now, that I think it's not just about getting the book out now. It's about getting the book out, having different, variables. Am I going to have it in a comic book? Am I going to have it in a webtoon? Am I going to? There's like all these different ways to go about it now. And while it's daunting, I think it's also exciting to me.
Okay. Des?
I would agree. I think we're going to continue to see kind of this trend of more indies choosing not to go that traditional publishing route and choosing to stay indie because you are maintaining that ownership over your worlds and your creations, and you are just as successful indie publishing versus traditional publishing without all of the limitations and contracts and things like that. I also think, and I agree with what Cecile was saying, that we are seeing a shift to different types of readers and different types of ways that readers are consuming content and just the different content that they're consuming, right? So she mentioned comics and graphic novels. We're seeing a huge shift there. We are probably going to continue to see serialized reading take off. There's so many apps for that now. And I think it's really just understanding in the next 5 years what readers are looking for and then meeting them in those places.
Good point. Good point. Uh, we have another question here. So do you two love AI or fear AI, artificial intelligence? What are your concerns regarding that particular recent element in writing?
Ugh. I don't know if they knew I was going to be doing this when they put that on there, but so the thing about AI is it's not fear. And I think people need to understand it's not so much this weird antiquated fear like get off my lawn, kind of thing. It is more about what kind of AI. So not all AI is bad, right? Automated tools, if they make your work quicker or something like that, or they're, checking your grammar, that's a little different than generative AI. And the issue with generative AI is when it was made, when it was created, it was used on copywritten work without permission of the copyright holders. So you had people whose books were scrapped for this machine, and that's how it was trained. And you have people whose art was scrapped, and that's how it was trained. And then you have people whose photography was scrapped. It's the fact that you don't have the absolute certainty when you use it that what you're getting isn't ripping off somebody else's stuff. So for me, it's an ethical issue. I don't care so much what people do for like, oh, I'm doing a home role play game and I'm using AI. Like that's not something I'm weighing in on. But if you're gonna make money off of something in any shape or form, it's kind of the responsibility of the person putting it out there to make sure that it's in fact theirs and not somebody else's, work being stolen.
Sure, sure. What about you, Des?
I would agree. I think there's a very gray space right now. When we think about AI, we think about ethics and how people are using it. And there's a very clear difference between generative AI and then the assistive AI. And really, I think it's up to, again, like Cecile was mentioning, ethics and making sure that if you are earning money from something, that you are truly a creative, and you're not, asking people to pay you for things that you yourself didn't necessarily create. I think that there's room and there's space for AI when it is not generative and when it is used in a helpful but not harmful way. But I do think it is something that's going to kind of continue to be a hot topic in our world, not even just in the book world, but in our world in general for the next couple of years until we as a society kind of find that balance and decide on our own ethical choices that we're going to make in regards to it.
Yeah, I agree on that one. In my real life, I work in a newspaper, and my managing editor was like, "Well, the bosses want us to use an AI generator, or at least look into it and see what it would do." So I type in a subject line, so and so at a meeting, this and that, and the AI generator pumped out what looked to be a fairly decent article. I mean, it was all in Associated Press style and all that, but you had to spend more time fact checking and changing titles and changing and all these details. It's just not a good tool, in my opinion, for that. What do you guys think about AI images as far as book covers or for us medium writers as far as the images for the medium stories that we write there? Do you guys have an opinion on that one? Probably the same vein.
It is the same. I work with a lot of graphic designers, and I'm friends with a lot of really great artists and book cover creators. And I understand why people use it. I do understand that. But what it comes down to for me is if I can either make it myself and not use AI, then I will. If I can't, then I will buy it or purchase it or get a stock photo. There are cheap, free, easy ways of doing things without necessarily using AI. I know it's like it's hard because it's hard for people to resist it. Some of the stuff that comes out is fine. Some of that stuff looks like, eldritch horror. Like it just depends
Something from
on
Cthulhu.
right. Like why do you have seven hands? I don't know. Um,
That could be a new kink.
yeah, I mean, I get it. For me, I choose not to. I'm not super mean to people about it unless they are aggressive about people not wanting to use it. But I have a pretty firm stance that I don't, unless I know it's not theft, I'm not doing it.
Okay. And Des, what about you? Do you have an opinion about that?
Yeah, pretty similar. I have a lot of friends that are models, creatives, artists. I prefer to pay for my art. And I'm always about like supporting other people in my circle. So yeah, I don't do the AI imaging, and I, I mean, I could see how it might be fun for like, I don't know, students or something like that, or children to kind of play around with it and get creative. And I can see the benefit of like having it exist to an extent. But I think again, when we go back to crossing those lines of charging people money for something that you didn't necessarily create and then taking something away from like actual artists, yeah, I stay away from it. And I don't like knock the people that do use it, but for me, I don't use it because again, I'd rather support the people in my circle. I'd rather network and build those relationships than create it myself. And it's time consuming. I don't have time for that. I'd rather just pay somebody to take my book cover photos and stuff like that.
Okay. And I will remind everybody that when we, at the end of these questions, we will I will read off some of the comments that we see. And if there's any questions, leave them in the comments below, so we can get to them at the end. That way I'm not interrupting everybody with all these questions because I do like to go off track. So the next question is, what is the biggest challenge as an indie author?
I have ADHD, so I will say marketing.
And what about
Um,
marketing?
so in depth, like when we first started out, or when I first started out, marketing was a little more simple. You sent your press kit to all of these bloggers and reviewers, and that was a majority of the marketing. BookBub was just coming out at the time and was so expensive, there was no way I was landing one of those. So it wasn't like there was a multitude of sites, there weren't a multitude of apps, there weren't a lot of sales channels open to us at the time. It was Amazon and then Smashwords, and that was it. Draft to Digital didn't exist then, Ingram Spark didn't exist then. In terms of formatting books, we had to do it all by hand. So it was an easier time, but it was less productive. I definitely did not get the reach I do now, but it was a lot easier. So I'd say for me, marketing continues to be the hardest part because you have to shift with the changes in the trends. You have to shift with 1 minute we're calling a genre this, then the next minute we realize we shouldn't have been calling it that. We got to call it this, and then you got to go back and change it. So there's just a lot of like rolling with the punches that we do now than when I first started. So the marketing continues to be my biggest challenge.
All right, and Des, what about you?
I think for me, honestly, it's been managing how to scale and grow. So I have really struggled with being able to kind of maintain all of the things that goes into indie publishing, right? Like, and I think that there's so much that readers don't necessarily know that happens behind the scenes. That indie authors are 90% of the time they're doing it themselves until they can afford to pay for somebody to cover that for you. And I think there's always this line of like, um, do I want to spend my money growing this piece and having somebody that I can trust pick up some of these other items that are on your plate and everything, and then really knowing like where are you investing all of your efforts in, right? I think it's difficult sometimes to know, should I be trying to push an audiobook or should I be pushing a second book in the series first, right? So really just trying to understand the market, the trends, and what the audience wants in order to stay kind of in your lane and on your trajectory in order to continue that growth. I think that's definitely the most difficult part for me.
Yeah, I'm not very good at marketing myself either. That's one of my weakest aspects of being a writer. So it is at this time that the script has told me that I have to announce the scavenger hunt word, which is this is the second one. If you listen to the last podcast with, or not podcast, if you listen to the last panel with Sunny, She kind of explained the scavenger hunt word of the well, it's not word of the day, it's word of the panel. Anyway, the word of the panel for today is ectoplasm. Ectoplasm. Write that one down and keep it for future panels because those will come in handy. All right, so going on to the next question. What advice do you have for writers wanting to self-publish?
Oof. I'm trying to think of all the things I wish somebody had told me. Um, Contracts, don't go into any kind of business with anybody, even if it's like you're getting a book cover done, or you're buying a photo, or you're like me and you decide you're going to do everything and you're going to be the photographer and you're going to work with the models. Like, you have to have contracts in place for everything, because you absolutely are going to run into times where something contradictory to what the original plan was happens or attempts to happen, and you're going to want to have a contract. That would be the first thing. Second thing is, please use editors. Don't, you could be the genius of the century, but if possible, get an editor. Like, it doesn't have to be the most expensive editor around, but get somebody to look at it besides you, because your eyes are going to get used to seeing what you've written and your brain fills in those parts for you, even when it's not actually there. So that's the other piece that I would say is, don't skimp on editing. Skimp on anything else. You can make your own cover. I don't care, but don't skip on me.
And then Des?
I think I would say, like, have the confidence and the belief in yourself that you can do it. I think it's really important to have a positive mental attitude and not to talk yourself out of it. Like, you are definitely your hardest critic. And if you don't believe in yourself and in your journey, then you're constantly contradicting everything that you're setting out to do. So I really think just not letting that negative headspace or the self-doubt take control. And you can't fail until you've tried something. So, like, make sure that you do it. Don't don't chicken out.
I like that. Des, I had a writing friend in college that had about 15 or 20 books that he had written. And I asked him, have you thought about sending any of these off to a publisher, or have you thought about self-publishing them? And he said, no, because I know that I'm not a great writer, but he still wrote. So I find that, yeah, you have to have that confidence in yourself to put yourself out there. And it does take a lot of confidence to do something like that, as far as putting your thoughts and ideas on the page and then sending them out for somebody, because they're going to get critiqued as soon as they come out. Cecile, question about editing. What do you consider to be for some indie writers out there that are just starting out? What do you consider to be a good price point as far as paying for editing services?
Ooh, well, I mean, it depends. So most editors have a specific type of editing that they do. And it depends kind of on what your strong points and your weaknesses are, and it's good to know. Um, for me, I do just fine with content. So a lot of what I do is send my things off pre-edit to betas, and then send it to the editor for line editing, which is where, like, I want a lot of the grammatical, the commas. I tend to write like I'm Canadian French, which I am. So some of my English is not in the right order. So that kind of thing is more important to me. But if you're somebody who has great grammar, but maybe you're having some plot holes that you're not realizing, or you're repeating words a lot, I like to have more content editing for that kind of thing. It's also having critique groups, having people read your stuff before you even get send it off to editing will take a lot of the fat out, so to speak. So if you can trade with somebody to do that piece, and then you can save money that way. Most times, I write shorter novels and novellas. I do not write 100,000 word books. So for me, I would say anywhere from $200 to $500 for an edit for a book is reasonable for me. And that's usually like up to 65,000 words, and it's usually like one or two go rounds. So they'll send, I'll send it in as best I can get it after all the betas look at it. The editor will send it back with initial corrections. I'll do that, send it back to them. They'll go through it one more time and then send back with final. And that's pretty standard, but you have to talk to people in advance. I also recommend getting references and talking to people they've worked with just to make sure they know what they're doing. Because there's a lot of people who are taking courses online, and they're not all equal, obviously. But I would just make sure you talk to some of the other customers to really make sure you're getting. Don't go on like Fiverr. That's not a good idea.
Yeah. Des, have you had the similar kind of experience with editing and finding any editorial services?
So I can say like I have a master's in English. So I do a lot of self-editing first before it goes to anybody else. And that kind of helps me with my cost. I've also been really lucky in the ability to bring on a really good team and surround myself with people who really just want to see me succeed. So a lot of my beta readers will go in, and before we're even sending things for these final edits for our line edits and our copy edits and stuff like that, they're going in and they're like, oh, I don't think that this sounds quite right. And, they're really helping you kind of finesse the final project. And they'll go in and they'll find typos like, oh, did you miss a space? Like, let's just adjust this space, that kind of thing. Before we get down to that nitty gritty of proofreading, which has really helped me kind of alleviate some of those costs, because when you're bringing a cleaner product to your editor, they're ultimately charging you less because it's less work that they're doing. So a lot of times, I always try to request a sample when I'm working with somebody new, so that they can see the cleanliness level of the manuscript, and then they'll give you kind of that custom rating for how much they're going to charge you per word. I would agree that around $300 to $500 is probably a good number when we're talking about a book that's around 50 to 60K. When we get up to the books that are like 100,000 words or 120,000 words or so, you could easily push into that $1,000 range, I think, depending on kind of your strengths and weaknesses as a writer, as well as what you need done. If you need like a heavy conceptual edit done, and you need line editing and you need proofreading, like you are really going to be adding up those costs individually. And I think it's important to note as well that you don't always want the same person doing the same edit, because their eyes get just as tired as yours. They get just as adjusted to that manuscript as you do. And you really want to make sure that you are working within like your budget and your teams and the people that are around you to kind of offset some of that. So like I like to use several people for different types of editing throughout the process, so that it's not just one person going in and doing all of the things. I've also been really lucky that my alpha team is one of them is an editor, and she's my editor. So sometimes we just do tradesies, and I'm like, hey, you want to come to my signing as my assistant, and I'll pay for everything. And could you maybe like do the editing on this book, and we'll just tradesies and swap instead? And that works really nice. So I think it's really important to build connections, right? Because there are people out there, and trading services is not necessarily something that is in the past. There are absolutely so many people in this industry who are willing to do tradesies with you for different things that they need done. I mean, I even have friends that are other authors, and we will do tradesies and proofread for each other. I'll be like, I'm getting a lot of interesting reviews. Like, I'm not so sure. Can you do a quick proofread? Somebody thought that they saw errors. I've seen it twice now or something. And we'll totally swap manuscripts with each other and proofread. Um, most of the time everything's fine, and that kind of thing. But I think it's always just good to have those extra pieces and the extra people in your corner, that everybody's working to support one another.
Great answer. And I'm gonna go off topic here. So Skylar and Sunny, if you guys get mad at me, I'm sorry. But based off of both of your answers, you both seem to have a good team of beta readers. This question, how does a author go about cultivating a group of trusted and competent beta readers? Either one can
Uh,
start off.
Sorry, I just had two deer run through my yard.
Oh, oh, nice,
Uh,
nice.
Basically, so I started when I first started, I was part of the RWA and we had a critique group that kind of was born from that. Um, Later on, read I was trad published, picked up on me, and then I kind of carried some of those friendships along. Also, if you go to like book conventions or writer retreats, a lot of times you're going to make friends in those groups. Find people that don't necessarily write exactly what you write. A lot of times, the change in perspective, you'll have something to offer them and they'll have something to offer you. But yeah, I was in a lot of forums way back, like back when, bulletin boards were hip. So I just try to keep in touch with people that I have, um, you know, professional respect for, but also, certainly relationships and friendships. I have my best friend in author world has been my best friend for, gosh, I think almost 6 years. And my PA is the first person who ever reviewed one of my books in 2013. So I think the stronger your relationships you make, you're going to have opportunities like, the person who designs my book covers is one of my best buddies and he's, a photographer, but he's also an author. So there's times where he'll need something and I can help. And there's times where I need something and he's quick to get, push me to the top of the queue to get something done. So it's relationships. That's why it matters how we treat people. I tell people that all the time is you don't want to assume that you're top of the heap in a group because you might be one day, but then you might need something the next.
Yes, what
Or
about
make
you?
friends. Yeah.
Okay. I know in college I was a part of a writing group. We we did just about everything together. It was great. I'm still in touch with them to this day. And if I know I need a trusted person to read something, they can always read something of mine. Uh, this next question, what advice do you have for writers that want to self-publish?
Uh, I'm sorry, I missed the first part. What advice for?
What advice do you have for writers that want to self-publish?
Oh, okay. Mainly research. When I first started, I don't think I did enough. I was ghost writing before I got published, so I didn't do a whole lot of research. I just assumed I knew what I was doing, and I mean, to some extent, sure, you might innately know what you're doing. But if you are trying to get in and be marketable, getting to know the genre that you're writing in, the trends, the marketing, look at some of the covers, read a lot. The more you read, the more you're going to kind of understand what your style is because you're going to know what you like and don't like. And you can kind of make sure that you're authentic, but also understanding what's popular.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You you have to do your research. I think you almost need to be a part of the community first as a reader. And I'm not saying like you have to go become like the best reader ever and get on all of these art teams and stuff like that. But I think that you need to join some of those more reader focused spaces and kind of see like what is it that makes readers love the books that they are loving. It's important to understand any industry, just like any other job that you might be doing. And publishing is no different. Like being an author is absolutely no different. It's so important to know um, not necessarily how to sell your soul and write to market, but how to maintain your unique creative voice and the things that interest you and the things that you want to write about, while also understanding how to sell those things and how to find the market of people who also enjoy those things. I think it's so, so important to read. Like I read all the time with my teams. We do a sometimes it's monthly, sometimes it's quarterly because we are super busy people, but we do a shared buddy read all the time. If there is a book that's coming out and we're like, oh my gosh, I want to read this, we will make time to read the book together or even do audio. I've turned into a huge audio book girl, just like going to the gym and stuff, right? Like it's interesting because I tend to shout things with my headphones on and forget that I'm at the gym, and that's always great. But I really think it's just important to know the industry and to understand the people that you are trying to market to, so that you can find some success and so that you can build positive relationships. Um, Relationships are everything. I tell people all the time, a lot of the breaks that you get are because of the people that you know. A friend of a friend of a friend is going to something or knows about a shared world, and you suddenly get invited to do that piece or to be a part of it. It's so much of getting those breaks is networking and making those relationships, um, and really fostering them. Like you can't just have a one-sided relationship. You have to be a good person too, and you can't just be a taker. It has to be equal.
Good points. Good points. So this next question, I keep saying this next question. I'm going to switch it up. What is one thing you did with publishing that you wished you hadn't?
Oh boy, I have to pick one, huh?
I mean, you
Uh,
can pick more, but I mean, we have a limited amount of time, so.
I know. I could go all day. No. Um, I made a lot of really rookie, goofy mistakes when I first started, but I think you're gonna have to some extent. Um, Certainly, I think I listened to people that didn't necessarily have the best interest at the time. Um, that's why I was trad published for a little while there. I think I regret that. And also don't buy into, sorry, my dog is annoying. Don't buy into big events and big financial outputs in the beginning. Don't try to jump on something because it's what all the popular kids are doing. I paid, I think it was probably $3,000 to $4,000 to do a big signing when I only had one book out. So it was not a good time, and it ended up, being kind of a disappointment to me because I put all this time and effort into it, and it wasn't reasonable that I would even do that. Um, and be careful who you trust. I mean, I definitely fell into, the old adage of kind of being the baby author and falling in with some people that were not necessarily looking out for me. So I would say I regret not knowing the things I know now.
Yes?
I would say I'm kind of a different answer on this one. So I've only been doing this for 2 years, right? Like actually officially doing this for 2 years, and I have zero regrets. Like there is absolutely nothing that I have done that I regret doing. Every single thing that has happened to me, every single thing that I've dealt with or I've gone through or I've experienced on this crazy journey has led me to where I am. And without those experiences or without, certain events and stuff like that, I would not be where I am today. So it would entirely change the trajectory of like my career arc almost. So I have absolutely no regrets. I'm a big proponent of fail forward, right? Like it can be an absolute fail, but you have to figure out like how do you make it a non-fail? How do you learn from your mistakes and do better next time? So for me, it's always fail forward and don't beat yourself up for the mistakes that you make. Just do better next time.
I like that responsive fail forward. I was so excited. My first book series that I wrote under my real name, was accepted into a independent publisher, and I waited, probably upwards of about a year before they decided to cut about 50% of all of the authors that they had signed up for in the last couple of years, right? So a lot of these guys and we survived, but then about a year later, I got cut. So it's one of those. What I would have done differently, I would have um, probably rethought about signing that contract with them ahead of time and save myself about a year's worth of waiting to see where the heck the book series was going to go. Maybe took it to another publisher or self-published or something like that. So the last question we have that's on the list of questions that Skylar has given us is: do you think there is a difference between independent publishing, indie publishing, versus self-publishing? And I'm guessing Cecile has a pretty stark answer to that one.
Yeah, the answer is you make less money. So the problem, even with trad publishing now, is the onus for marketing, the onus for advertising, and the onus for promotion is largely falling on the author, regardless of how their contract is set up. And this is trad, this is indie publishers, and this is self-publishing. So if you're going to be the one doing a lot of the hardest work, which is all of those things, I prefer to make the most of the money. That doesn't mean it works for everybody, because some people can't do the output of money in the beginning. So when I first started, I did not have the money to pay for editing, for photos, for covers, for any of that. So for me, I don't regret going indie publishing with other publishers at the time because I couldn't afford all of those things. Now, the sales did not do amazing. They had my books for 5 years. When I got my rights back, I redid everything, and they have done tremendously better than they did under the indie publishers. But again, when I first started, I didn't have all that extra budget to work with, and I didn't know people. So I think the difference is in what you make for royalties, in what you are able to do with your books. You can't make decisions on your books when they're signed to even an indie publisher. You can't decide, I'm going to make an audiobook today, or I'm going to write the sequel, because even if you write the sequel, most of these contracts have a first right of refusal attached to them. So if you write a sequel, you have to send it to that publisher. And if they say, yeah, we want it, you have to give it to them. If they say, no, we don't want it, then good luck getting it published, because you can't. So there's a lot of that when you think about the differences. For me, the difference is control, money, and effort, really, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Des, what about you?
I would definitely agree. There's a huge difference, and I think Cecile kind of nailed it with the control and the money piece. There's a huge difference between the amount of money that you are not necessarily earning, that you're losing out on when you are going more of that indie publishing or trad route. I mean, sometimes with trad, I feel like that's kind of hit or miss. It's a coin flip, right? But as a self-publisher, you absolutely maintain most of those earnings, and you're able to decide what you're investing your earnings back into in order to continue to grow your brand. And that kind of bleeds into the control piece as well, right? Kind of like Cecile was mentioning, like if you want to do something, you can do it. If you want to go make a special edition, or you want to run a Kickstarter and turn your book into a comic or a graphic novel, you absolutely can. There are no contracts or strings attached to any of that holding you back when you are self-published versus indie publishing, because even those smaller presses, as she mentioned, they do have contracts, they do have rules, and they are ultimately in it to help grow themselves as well. Like they have to think about it as a business too, and for them, they're in it to grow their business. They're not necessarily in it to grow you. Whereas when you are self-publishing, you're self-publishing as your business. And so you have all of those pieces working for yourself and for your brand.
Great. All right, guys. We are currently at 11:45, well, 10:45 Central Time. That ugly time zone. Sorry to anybody I don't mean to upset anybody from the Central Time Zone. Skylar will tell me that later. Anyway, we are at the end of this panel. I want to thank everyone for spending the last 45 minutes with us. The next panel is 15 minutes, and that is Paranormal Goes Bump in the Night. That should be a very good one. We also have at 11:10 H.L. Brooks in the Reading Lounge. Make sure to take note of the scavenger hunt word from earlier to submit it for another chance to win. Giveaways will start at 4:45 Central Time. You must be present to win. Make sure when you're leaving the breakout room, you click leave room and not leave meeting. It's important that you don't click leave meeting. You want to leave the breakup room.
So what
Breakout
was
room.
the word?
Oh,
Ectoplasm.
there you go. Ectoplasm is the word.
Hey,
It's
can
like
I ask a question?
Thank you.
Sure, if the two panelists are still here, yeah, sure.
Are the panelists still here?
I see that they
I'm
are,
here.
yes. I didn't want to
Okay.
I didn't want to have anybody, not have enough time to, break before the next one. So go ahead.
Okay. So I don't know, 2 years ago I had my collection of erotic short stories and I wanted to self-publish it. And I Googled and I found KDP, which stands for Kindle Direct Publishing, and I lost my mind. I loved it because it offered me an opportunity to have my book in physical format available with a cover I controlled and the content I controlled through the PDF I put out. And it asked me for no out of pocket money. I did not think that would be possible. I thought that I would have 500 copies of my book somewhere stacked in my apartment and that I would have to mail them myself. And no, I just put everything up there, and KDP took care of the rest. My question is: are there alternatives to that? Any other websites that offer the same or similar services for people who want to self-publish but maybe don't want to do it via the Amazon self-publishing arm?
Yes. Oh my God, my favorite question ever. So I'm wide. I refuse to just sell on Amazon. I don't do Kindle Unlimited. What you can do, there's a website called Draft to Digital. There is a website called Smashwords. There is Ingram Spark. These are all places that you can upload your book for free and get distribution to other places, and you can choose where the books will be distributed. They take their cut, same as KDP. When you get your sales, it's print on demand, same as KDP. The only time you're going to pay anything is if you order books that you want to take to a convention or something. But they all have pros and cons, so I would look into all of them. Yeah, Drafted Digital does own Smashwords. They're, I think, fully connected now. There was a while where you could do both. And I love Drafted Digital. Listen, it's like one of my favorite things. Or you can actually go and get your own ISBN, but that costs money, and you can directly deal with your retailers. I prefer not to do that necessarily for all of them. I do directly deal with some of the retailers like Google Play and Apple. But you can, if you go to either Drafted Digital or Ingram Spark or any of those, you can pick where they're going to send it. Libraries, overseas, a variety of places. But I would
they
always
can
suggest
print.
doing. Yep, you can order print. Yep.
Okay.
They're print on demand, just the same as Kindle. And they offer you a free ISBN on Drafted Digital. And I believe they also do on Barnes and Noble and Google Play.
Thank you.
Anytime. That's like one of my favorite things is going wide.
Des, did you have anything to add to that?
I think she covered the entire wide list. Like I'm also a wide author. The only other thing I would add is I'm also a serial author. So check into things like Kindle Vella, Ream, Patreon, stuff like that, where you can be writing your draft and you can be earning money to pay for services for things like covers, editing, marketing, all of that fun stuff. And you're building a reader base. So your readers are able to follow along as you're writing the story. Don't be discouraged that they're just going to be there for the free stuff and they're not going to convert or anything, because a lot of times my people that are reading me on serial fiction are also my one-click pre-orders.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Eli. Okay, so we will end this one and we will see you guys in a little bit.